going into my 8th year in the district. But that's not the only perspective I hold. Probably a lot like a lot of the panel here and folks in the audience. I also serve on the Eden Prairie Chamber of Commerce board as a board member, and so I'm talking all the time with our local businesses and our community. My wife is actually a small business owner, so we have that in our family as well, and I'm actually the only educator in my entire family. Everyone else is in the business field or medical field or other spaces, and so I get to look at this from a lot of different perspectives. You know, I think a couple of things Minnesota has done really well is we've had a strong value on education over a long history, and you know, we've invested into that. Before I came in today, I actually had a chance to talk with Pat McQueenie, our Eden Prairie Chamber president. I spent some time with Dr. Stacy Stanley, who's our associate superintendent. She's been working on some of our workforce initiatives and partnerships in the community, and then also with our high school principal, Mr. Virgin. So some of my thoughts are not just mine, but I'm pulling in from some other really smart people too. I try to surround myself with those. You know, I think of a few other things that Minnesota has done well that's put us in a good position is, you know, we have opened up a lot of PSEO opportunities around programming. We have a lot of students from our high school take advantage of Hennepin Tech here to look at some of those pathways. We have a great partnership with ISD 287 Intermediate School District. Sandy, the superintendent there, is sitting in the audience today. And we actually serve as a fiscal host for Gateway in partnership with 287 and with Hennepin Tech that provides some of those opportunities for students in a middle college experience here too with that. And so, you know, I think those partnerships and collaborations are things that we've done really well here in Minnesota, and we've held to high standards inside of our educational system. I think, you know, our relationships and partnerships that are based on local control and local people. I think, you know, when you have people who can sit down in a room and talk things through and say, and, you know, it's one thing to talk theory, it's another to say, let's get this done. And when you have people that are local and vested and can work together to do that, I think that's really beneficial to kids. And so, you know, I'm really proud of, at least here in Eden Prairie, the relationships we have with chamber and businesses, and then we've got good state support, higher education, and some of our nonprofits as well. So I think those are some of the things that Minnesota's done really well. You know, I think some of the innovative programming that I'm aware of here in Minnesota, because I get to spend a lot of time with colleagues, is I actually just participated in a meeting with metro area superintendents and mayors. And so we met in downtown Minneapolis about 3 weeks ago. This was the topic that we were actually discussing. And it was amazing to hear how many K-12 institutions and cities are really working on this topic. Our middle schools and high schools are extremely well aware of this topic and are really trying to do things in that space. I would also say, you know, we in Eden Prairie, we're a very mission-driven organization. Our mission is to inspire each student every day. And so we are really student-centered and trying to figure out how do we connect students to what they're good at and they're interested in and what's going to work for them. And, you know, we also have, you know, as we talk about people being aware of that, it's one thing for us to drive programming, it's another for our parents to drive programming, because we're meeting our parents' needs all the time as well, right? And so, you know, as we talk as a state, as a federal body, to talk about, you know, a culture, a larger culture than just an educational culture, around the value of different trades and different opportunities that kids have and pathways. And I think we also need to make sure that, you know, we ensure that those pathways aren't just a way to increase racial disparities that we currently have and see in some ways, and that we want to make sure that those opportunities continue to open up opportunities for future education or career pathways for kids. You know, as we think about our organization, our board has been really progressive in this space. You know, we've had a big testing kind of push inside of our country. And our board has really stepped back and said, yes, that's important in terms of those foundational skills, which are really college kind of skills that we're assessing and testing. But as I hear from our business community and other entities, often it's those soft skills, it's those 4 C's or 21st century skills, you know, around communication and critical thinking, thinking creatively, being able to communicate effectively. Those are the things that are often the things that our businesses and other career pathways are most in need of. And so our board has taken a really proactive measure in terms of, we're actually measuring that for each of our students, and we're focused on that inside of our curriculum and instruction. We've made a big move towards authentic learning experiences with our students. It's one thing to offer rigor. I mean, it's easy to make something really difficult and arduous, but it's more difficult to make something really meaningful. And that's where, honestly, I think our partnerships and my request all the time of businesses and local folks is, how do we create authentic learning opportunities that do highlight the benefits of various careers, provide exposure and opportunities for kids to understand what those are and what those pathways look like. One of the things that we did earlier this spring, about May, is we brought together a community roundtable of businesses, higher education, nonprofits, school staff to really talk about what does that look like as we think about career opportunities. And so, we really talked about educator partnerships where our educators are getting out and seeing what industry needs are and having exposure. We talked a lot about workforce skill development that really are those soft skills. We spent some time talking about multiple pathways to a career and what does that look like. And we talked a lot about mentorship programs, because our kids are in need of, if we're going to increase authentic experiences, we need those places and connections for people to do that. We already have a lot of those things going, and we're looking at how do we expand that. And we're a high school of a little over 3,000 students, and so I always say it's great if we have 100 kids or 200 kids doing that, but we're missing 2,800 then. So when we have great partnerships coming in and working with kids, we need to be able to scale that. And that's one of the things that we continually work on. I have colleagues that are doing some amazing things with those public-private partnerships that Bob referenced. We had a car dealership actually installed in Burnsville, complete automotive, state-of-the-art automotive things, so kids, and then promised jobs, so kids are learning and then filling workforce in Alexandria. There's a complete robotics and welding piece in partnership. There's Fab Lab pieces that are there. We're heavily invested into Project Lead the Way. We're working with our robotics team of not only just a club, but actually that's classes that kids are getting credit for, and continuing to invest into kind of those business environments. And so, so those are some of the things that I know of right now that are great. We have a wonderful partnership with our chamber, where we are now in our 5th year of our Career Expo that we work with in partnership with our businesses, so it exposes kids to opportunities. So how do we continue to increase that to look at manufacturing jobs or other types of opportunities would be wonderful. And then we actually just had our first job fair where it was getting our kids into the employment, in workforce over the summer or into the year in partnership. And so I think those are great. I think from a federal perspective, there's a couple of different pieces here that, we continue to request, and I'm going to speak from a K-12 superintendent seat for a moment, is, we still have, and I know Congressman Phillips has heard me talk about this before, we still have a lot of unfunded promises from the federal government, specifically in special education. To give you an example, in Eden Prairie, that's about $8 million that's unfunded. So if you just take our budget right now and you said, okay, the federal government comes through on previous promises, that's $8 million we have to invest back into programming and innovation kinds of things. And so that's obviously one of the priorities for us. And then the other thing is, I know there's a couple of different bills right now that are really looking at this workforce type pieces that are grant-based. And and I think that's a good thing. But I also think that when we look at those grants, it needs to promote those public-private partnerships. And I think that when those grants are designed, if it does pull in multiple entities who are working together in that space, that's a lot more effective than just giving it off to one specific entity, because it focuses that. And lastly, I think looking towards things that are less disciplined in terms of legislation from a K-12 perspective. We are very siloed academically, and if what we want are opportunities and authentic learning experiences, we really need to look at more holistic programming that's not necessarily siloed just into math or just into reading or just into writing, but for an example of something like an aviation field where there's lots of need there for mechanics or for pilots or things like that, that curriculum pulls all of those disciplinary concepts together into an interdisciplinary concept into authentic learning. So I think those are the types of programs that will also help in that space.
Great. Thank you, Josh. An observation